All right, guys, so this is where we're going to implement React Redux Firebase, which is a fantastic library for using Firebase in your Redux state. Okay, so we have a lot to do here, a lot to install and set up. So let's go to VS Code real quick. And I'm just going to close up the clients that we've been working in, the sidebar, all these components. We don't need any of this. I'm going to just open up my console here and just stop the server for a second, and then let's install some stuff. So we want to install Redux. We want to install React-Redux. We want to install React-Redux-Firebase, and we want to install Redux. One second, what is it? Redux Firestore. Okay, so these are the dependencies that we need, at least for now. So again, just to reiterate, we have Redux, we have React Redux, which is the library that binds React and Redux together. We have React Redux Firebase, which integrates with Firebase, allows us to access our collections, our auth, stuff like that. And then Firestore is used to deal with Firestore. Remember, there were two different types of databases, the real-time and the Firestore. We need this because we use Firestore. So let's go ahead and install this stuff. And if you look at your package.json file, they should get added here once they're installed. Okay, so you can see they've all gotten added. Good. So now what we're going to do is create our store. So I'm going to go into our source folder. Make sure you're not in your components folder. You just want to be right in your source folder. And we're going to create a file called store.js. Okay, just like we did when we looked at Redux, except it's going to be a bit different because we're using this library. But I'm going to go ahead and just start the server up, npm start. Okay, so it's going to start that up. Good. Now, as we create our store, I would keep this documentation open because we're using a lot of this code. Well, it's not going to be exact because they're not just creating a store and exporting it. This is like their whole index.js file. They have their app component. They're bringing in React and render and stuff like that, provider. So it's not going to be this exact thing, but we're bringing in most of the same stuff from Redux, from React, Redux, Firebase, and so on. But we're going to type ours out. So let's go to our store.js, and let's say IMP tab, and we want to bring some stuff in from Redux. So let's bring in create store. Let's bring in combine reducers and compose from Redux. Let's import. Oh, you know what? One thing I forgot to install was Firebase itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a new terminal instead of stopping the server and just do npm install Firebase like that. I had a feeling I was forgetting something. There might even be another one that I forgot, but we'll get to it if I did. All right, so let's go back up here. Let's actually make this smaller. So we want to bring in Firebase itself. So let's say import Firebase from Firebase. And then what we want to do is import the Firestore. So we can say import Firebase / Firestore like that. Let me just check the documentation real quick. Yeah, right here. So Firebase Firestore. And if you used the real-time database, you wouldn't need to put this stuff in, but we used Firestore, so we do need to do this stuff. Okay, and then I'm going to do IMP tab, and let's bring in stuff from React, Redux, Firebase. So from that, we want to bring in React, Redux, Firebase. We also want to bring in the Firebase reducer. Okay, it has its own reducer. And then let's do IMP tab again. And this is going to be from Redux-Firestore. So from that, we want to bring in Redux Firestore. and then the Firestore reducer. Okay, just like there's a Firebase reducer, there's a Firestore reducer. So when we look at our Redux tools, it's going to show us in our state Firebase and Firestore. So let's see, next thing, we're going to have some custom reducers as well. So I'm just going to say reducers, and I'm going to put just a comment that says to do, because we're not creating those just yet, but we will, and we'll have to bring those in. Next thing we want is our Firebase config. So let's say Firebase config, which is an object. And this is where I showed you back in the second video, I think, when we created our Firebase database. I showed you the object that had all the API key and stuff like that. So we're going to have to go back to our Firebase. And if we go, let's see, let's go to React Client Panel and click on this right here, Add Firebase to your web app. And then what you want to do is grab everything in this config object. So the API key all the way down to the messaging sender ID. So we're going to copy all that and then go back to VS Code and paste that in here. Okay, so that's our Firebase config. And yours should be different than mine. You make sure you use your own. And then we also need to do if we look at the docs, let's see, we need this React Redux Firebase config, saying that we want user profile to be users. Okay, let's see, Firestore for profile instead of real-time database. Yeah, so we want this as well. See how it's commented out, but since we're using Firestore, we want this as well. So I'm just going to copy this. If you guys don't have this page open, just go ahead and type this in. But we want to uncomment this. All right. And let's just put a comment here as well. I'll just say React Redux Firebase config. Okay. Next thing we want to do is initialize the Firebase instance. Okay, so we have to do Firebase, and we want to do Firebase dot initialize app, and then pass in the config. Okay, the main Firebase config which we created above. And then we also have to initialize the Firestore. So to do that, we just want to create a variable called Firestore, and we want to set that equal to Firebase dot Firestore, like that. Okay, and then let's see, let's go back to the docs here. And we want to do this right here. So add React Redux Firebase enhancer when making the store creator. So we're going to create this, we're going to add this create store with Firebase. And then down here, when we create our store, we want to call that and then pass in our root reducer and initial state and stuff like that. So let's see, should we just copy this? Yeah, we'll just copy this. And we'll put this right here. So I know there's a lot of setup, a lot of boilerplate, but it gives us a lot of functionality. I'm going to uncomment that because we are using Firestore. I don't think we need to change anything here. Yeah, that should be good. So RRF config refers to this right here. All right. So next thing we want to do, just save that. Next thing we want to do is our reducer, our root reducer right here. And then any other reducers we have. So you'll see we'll have Firebase and Firestore, and then any other ones we create, like the notify and the settings, we're going to put in here as well. But let's add that. Okay, so we want to uncomment this because we are using Firestore. And we can get rid of these comments here. We don't need these. All right, let's go back and let's see what else do we need here. So initial state, and then we want to set our store to that. All right, so we should be pretty good here. We'll type the rest out. So for our initial state, it's going to be empty for now, but what we're going to do later is our settings for the application are going to be held in local storage, and we're going to fetch those settings from local storage and put them in this initial state later on. Right now we're going to leave this blank, but later we'll have like settings and we'll have that set to whatever's in local storage for our settings, but it's blank for now. Okay, so now we can create our store. So we're going to say const store equals, and we want to use this create store with Firebase. Okay, very important we use that. And then in here we pass in our root reducer. Okay, we want to pass in our initial state, and then we want the React Redux Firebase. We want to call that, but I also want to use the Redux dev tools. Okay, remember we have to implement that. So we need to use compose here since we're using both. So in compose, we want to pass in React Redux Firebase, which takes in the Firebase instance. And then we also want the dev tools. So we want to do window dot double underscore Redux underscore dev tools extension double underscore double ampersand window dot double underscore Redux dev extension, and then a set of parentheses, and we should be good. We just need to export the store, and good. So let's save. Actually, we want to export default store. Okay, so yeah, a lot of setup, but like I said, it's going to give us a lot of stuff. It's going to give us these two reducers, where are they? Firebase and Firestore, which is going to have a lot of stuff inside for us to use, and it saves. It ultimately saves us a lot of time. So now let's bring in our store to our main app.js file. So let's see. We'll put this. We'll just go right here, and let's import. We need to bring in our provider from React Redux. Okay, so from this point on in this file, it's just regular React Redux stuff. It has nothing to do with Firebase. And we want to import the store we just created. So import store from /store. And we want to wrap everything in our provider. So right above router, we're going to do provider, and we want to say store equals our store. Okay, we'll go down here and save that. So we get this Firestore as assigned value but never used in store.js, line 27. So right here, this isn't being used. I think we're going to need this for something, so I'm just going to comment that out for now just to get rid of that warning. All right, and then if we go to our application, it still works good. And what we're going to do is open up our tools here, our dev tools. This is just telling us we're using the development build of the SDK. Don't worry about this. But let's go to our Redux dev tools. And you can see that there's a lot of stuff happening here. So authentication init started. This is all coming from React Redux Firebase. So there's a bunch of different actions you're going to see here. And that's the beauty of it, is we didn't have to create any of this. It all happens for us. And if we look at our state, notice we have Firebase and Firestore. So this is the whole reason we set this thing up, so that we have this Firebase object that has a whole bunch of stuff in it. If we log in, all the user data is going to be in this auth. Okay, Right now it's empty because we're not logged in, but it'll be in there. We also have the profile stuff. But the data itself, like let's say our clients that come from Firebase, it's not going to be in Firebase, it's going to be in Firestore. If we use the real-time database, then it would be in Firebase. But since we use Firestore, it's going to be in data, or it's going to be in ordered, I believe, actually, because it's ordered data. So we have these two pieces of state available to us, which are going to be very, very helpful. And it's going to be very easy to do things right within our component, because we already have this in our state. So we simply need to connect to it in our components. We don't have to create actions and reducers to deal with like adding clients or anything like that, or even authentication, logging in, stuff like that. We already have it available to us because of this React Redux Firebase. And as we move along, you guys will see how valuable this little plugin or whatever this is, this library is. So yeah, that's going to be it for this video, guys. In the next one, we're going to work on our clients component and getting the actual clients from Firebase rather than just a static array that we have in the render method.